There's only two reasons why you do a job. It's either growth or money. That's my personal opinion. A lot of people, unfortunately, when they're younger, they won't necessarily have as much money as they want to. And so what happens is that they take roles that pay them the most money, but won't necessarily offer them the most growth. What you want to try to do is try to find a role that gives you the ability to live comfortably whilst maximizing your ability to grow.
Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode from Careers Talks. Today I have Leon. Leon is a data scientist, so this episode will be mainly on data science, machine learning. You did a double degree as your bachelor's in maths and physics at Warwick. Then you did your master's in theoretical physics at Cambridge, and you did your PhD in statistics at Cambridge. Then you decided to move into the education a bit, so you taught at Harvard, MIT, then you started your career at McKinsey as an analytics and data science consultant. You worked across different industries and companies, so you moved to Facebook, you worked at TikTok, you worked at a pharmaceutical drug discovery startup, and most recently you worked at the World Bank as a data scientist in DC. So knock on wood, man, mashallah, as we say in Arabic, يخزي العين, يعني it's a great career profile. And today I think we're gonna just talk about what did you learn from this experience, what does it mean to work in machine learning, your insights from working in all these different industries and types of companies. So there's a lot to cover today. So let's start with the motivation to go from bachelor's all the way to PhD before starting even working. So what's the motivation behind that, and walk us through this decision a bit, please.
I know my entire CV must seem like such an ADHD process, and it seems as though I just forgot to take my... I was
struggling to read throughout, mashallah, it's a lot of
I'm glad to have that iPad on hand, man. It must seem like I just forgot to take my ADHD medication one day, right? Just like
it came in handy this episode. I really needed to list stuff.
All good, man. So so I did my master's was a research focused master's. I've always been very passionate and interested in the innovation aspect of anything that I do. And my research focused master's kind of focused primarily and principally on developing photovoltaic cells. It was very much motivated by being in Lebanon at various stages of my life, and as most people who are of Lebanese origin or have visited Lebanon before will understand, there's certain times of the day where you don't take the elevator because the electricity will serve you. No one will come to save you. The electricity cuts out constantly. Yes. So I looked on the rooftops and I was like, I don't see photovoltaic cells, and this was a very sort of like Western mindset that we had, because I had the photovoltaic cell in my Casio calculator when I was like 18 years old, and so I was like, we have these everywhere in the West, why can't we have these on the roofs here?
True.
And then I realized there was a cost dependent issue. Now this is before China started to produce them in mass, and at that time I was like, okay, cool, let me go and see if I can do printable photovoltaic cells. So this was the OLED screens that you have that you kind of bend these screens. So those emit light, but the opposite process is when they take light in and produce electricity. So we were trying to do that. They weren't very efficient. In a couple of months' time, I was like, this is cool, but let's see what else there is on offer.
Nice.
I was applying for PhDs. At the time, my grandma was diagnosed with breast cancer. And one of the biggest motivators to do anything is when you have an emotional connection to, I guess, a stakeholder involved. And in that case, I saw the biggest stakeholder in this entire process as my grandma. And so I took that breast cancer personally. It was like an attack on me. I was like, no, man, I need to go and fight this. So,
nice.
But I also started to find out about this weird thing called machine learning. This is before machine learning became the hype that it is now. Like, I spoke to one of my friends, he was at Cambridge, and he was telling me, yo, I'm doing this cool thing where it's basically like maths, but it's not really. And what we do is we try to get machines to learn things. And I was like, you're building robots. And that was what I thought. I was naive at the time. That was
fair. Like, back then, we're talking about, what, 2014, 15?
Yeah. Back then, neural networks weren't the thing that they were. We didn't have these crazy, GPU technologies.
The implementation of the concept wasn't as advanced as now.
Yeah, man. Like, GPUs weren't keeping up with the maths. And so at some point they ballooned when I got into my PhD, but at the time people were using a lot of Bayesian probabilistic models. So these are models that are based on kind of like more statistically
Theories.
So at the time, so my friend told me about this, and I was like, this looks really cool. And I tried to apply for it. I kind of like started speaking to the machine learning department at Cambridge, which was like one tiny little. It was like, it's not as big as we think it is now. Like right now, we have data science degrees. Back then, the machine learning department was like one part of one floor, and the engineering department, like that's where they put it.
Oh wow!
And so I applied there, but then I started hearing about this fellowship that came up in the Cancer Research UK office in Addenbrooke's in Cambridge. I applied there, and I got the offer. It was really cool. I mean, imagine being a physicist or a mathematician. Like a lot of your work tends to be, especially in the theoretical department, the number of stakeholders that you typically tend to have is kind of, it has an upper bound.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when we had group projects doing physics, group project meant another person. Like that was N equals 2.
That's the max. The limit.
It was so constrained. So I was like, all of a sudden now, you have biologists, you have doctors, you have the guys running the experiments, you have so many different teams working together to try and cure this disease.
That's in your PhD, you mean?
That's it, exactly.
Yes,
and I love that.
Yes.
I love that aspect. It was missing previously, and I was able to really develop the crucial stakeholder kind of like development skills or kind of stakeholder management skills that you need anywhere to get a project done successfully.
And how did you manage to combine? So your degree was in statistics, but you applied, like, how does it work when you do the fellowship? Was it like a specialization? Every student can choose a specialization. You chose cancer research, or how does it work? Just for students who maybe are interested, or young professionals who want to do PhD in statistics or machine learning.
So if you want to go for a PhD, there's 2 routes. You apply via the website, or you email haphazardly.
Yes, the doctor or like whoever
the professor.
Yes.
Yeah. Everyone's applying via the website, right? So everyone's putting the application through. Now, what you do is when you introduce yourself directly to a supervisor or do it directly to the department themselves, is you start to understand whether or not you will be able to have a good working connection with that person.
Yeah.
You're going to spend 3 to 4 to 5 years sometimes, right, of your life working for this person, working with them. They're going to be mentoring you as you develop the research skills you need to be able to get publications out, right, to be able to do good research. So when you email, I feel like it's a sort of precursor step to setting up that initial interview, and you get a general idea of how you're going to gel with the department or with that supervisor. Based on that initial interaction. So I always recommend people, man, don't be scared to just reach out there, speak to the person. Even if you have to email 2 or 3 times, it's fine. Like, when you're this early on in your degree, like I used to always feel this sense of, oh my God, my pride. They didn't reply to the second email.
You have to remove this idea.
Especially as an Arab, like our pride, you take it very seriously. And it's like 3rd time emailing. Oh, can I do that really?
Cannot do that.
Can't sleep the night if I do that. How will I live with myself? But do it. There's no sense.
100%.
Because later on, when you're 30, when you're 32, you've done that PhD. Now you can think to yourself, I mean, I really don't care. It's not like anyone can kind of like, sit there and judge you like, oh, you sent 3 emails, like, look at you. No one cares.
True.
Everyone's doing it. People are building bots that have ChatGPT integrated to send those emails.
Yes.
So don't feel ashamed, even if you have to call the office sometimes, like the fact that you're doing that, like if you do it too persistently, it can't be seen to be like, what's this stalkerish person.
Yes.
But if you do
as long as you're following up and
in a calculated way, read the room, read the science. So but going back to the original question, I didn't do statistics, I did maths and physics, and then based on my technical skills and my mathematical skills during physics, I studied C programming when I was back doing my bachelor's. I was using MATLAB for my master's, and so those gave me the programming skills that I needed to be able to kind of like launch a career in the direction of data science and machine learning and kind of like in the direction of cancer research. So at the time they were looking for somebody that was able to demonstrate those technical skills, that had worked with kind of big data sets before. And during my PhD, it was it gave me my first taste of what does big data look like.
Yes,
because you have genomic data, you have so you have genomic data, which is data at the DNA level, right? So you have AT, GC, CCC, those are big, and then you have transcription data as well, so that's kind of like one level above. Then you have proteomic data, and then it's a hierarchical data structure, right? So you have so much data, and you really have to learn how to manage that level of complexity.
Technically capable of doing it. Okay, so you had the foundations, but the people you're reaching out to and the professors were specifically in cancer research.
That's it.
Okay, got it. And then you finished your PhD. You started teaching for around a year in MIT and Harvard. How was that experience? Like, and then how did you decide that, okay, you know what, I don't want to do all this education stuff. I want to move to corporate. Tell me a bit more about that.
Sounds like the biggest sellout. So no, I went to Harvard. I applied to Harvard for a postdoc. So it was a postdoctoral fellowship. So as part of your responsibilities, you can teach. You have a certain amount of money which is allocated to you to do research. So I transitioned from cancer research into neuroscience. And the reason for that, again, is something which was driven out of a certain situation that evolved in my life. My cousin got into a car accident in Dubai. He flew out of the windshield. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt. He fell head first into the concrete, and he was declared kind of brain dead, right? But the problem is that in Dubai, at the time, from what I think at least, it was very challenging to kind of like, equate brain death with death. And so to take my cousin off the machine wasn't an option, I think, at the time. One option that the family was considering anyway. And so that inspired me to go into neuroscience. I started working there, trying to get into traumatic brain injury research. I worked on consciousness and what it means to sleep. And I love that because sleep is obviously like a fundamental cornerstone of any Arab. So I was like, yo, hell yeah, man, if I can learn more about sleeping and doing better sleep, I'll do that.
Yes.
The models were different. So I moved from doing kind of more survival-based models in cancer research to kind of hierarchical models, so more time series modeling in the neuroscience space. You have a lot more data that comes from fMRI, for example, that you can kind of mine for patterns, but you also have a lot of time series data, like EEG data, right? It's not necessarily the best, it doesn't give you the best spatial context, right, which means that you don't necessarily know exactly what's happening everywhere because you only have a limited number of nodes everywhere, but you have the data to be able to kind of like ascertain what's happening generally in
what's the activity in the brain, basically.
Very high resolution, very, very high sampling frequency. So that was something new. I thought it was cool, but then at some point I got a call from my mom and she was like, so how's that professor thing going? Because I was trying to be a professor. I was like, why not? And I was like, Mom, I got 4 years left on this postdoc. And she was like, wow, how about you come home and make money?
Fair shout.
She was like, you've done education. That's it. Like you got to level 99.
I mean, Cambridge and Harvard and MIT, leave something for the rest of us.
It's like you finished leveling up Charizard, man. Focus on Charmander. What's his name? Lost Boys. To do something else with him. So I was like, okay, cool. Done.
I did what I had to do.
I was like, yeah, man. So I hanged up my Harvard hoodie and I was like, time to go back. And I started applying for jobs everywhere. I got an offer from Uber in San Francisco at the time. Wow. But man, 8 months without my family was enough to say, like, uncle, let's stay in the UK. And I started applying for random companies, and most companies were starting to get really up and coming in the data science space, and they wanted people that kind of like were freshly out of university that can bring a more nuanced technical approach, that they could build the models that they were selling. And
this is around 2018, 19.
That's it. So November 2018 is when I got my offer from McKinsey. Wow. I didn't know what McKinsey was. I'm not gonna lie, I had no idea. I sent off the application form on LinkedIn, and my uncle was like, "Oh my god, McKinsey!" Especially old school finance guys. Like, "Yo, this is it. You've made it." So I had no idea what it was at the time, and I thought we did like finance or something. It's like, I don't know, trading. Like, I had no idea. And then I got the offer from them. I go there. I'm wearing a suit for the first time, graphite. I felt so uncomfortable. But yeah, that was my first. That was me selling out, man. That
was the first time you.
That's it.
Started real life. Corporate,
and I have to say, for a first-time job, McKinsey is crazy.
It's intense.
You go from research where everything is chill, vibing. You can do a project over the span of 8 months. It doesn't work out. It's fine. And then out of nowhere, it's like 6 weeks. If it should have been delivered 2 weeks before. I was like, whoa, man, how are we gonna get everything ready? Just go.
Yes. No, it's very, very intense. Yeah. And what did you feel like? For you, what were the expectations? Like when you were doing your PhD, your postdoc, were you really keen on staying in education, or you were like, okay, I'm ready to go to corporate, I don't mind like not applying? I mean, you definitely applied the technical part of what you've learned, but all the scientific part, do you feel that, I'm not applying this anymore, or has it benefited you in a way in the corporate, throughout your corporate journey, basically?
Everyone that leaves their PhD will have to contend with this issue, because you were spoiled in your PhD in terms of innovative potential. You could try most PhDs could try any idea, read any paper, spend so much time just enveloped by literature. It's such a beautiful time of your life. At the time, you hate it because you're broke, right? Oh my God, I'm eating cup noodle every single day. What's my life? But when you leave that time of your life, and out of nowhere, it's like, okay, damn, I have to only build linear models now because, for example, at McKinsey, we would build, credit risk models for regulators that would, impose very strict conditions. Your model had to be a linear model. The variables had to be interpretable, right? Every single one of the decision variables had to be fully explainable, like the logic behind it. There was no black box, throw XG booster it, go, let's see what happens. This had to be very, very precise because, there's so many different regulatory authorities that are making sure that what you're doing, it benefits everyone involved.
Yes.
And so you really have to kind of accept the fact that whatever you do from a research perspective from now on has to be your own little project you do on the side. And, you can try and be a little bit more innovative with how you deliver a project, right? How you choose the features, how you go about it, how you explain it. But in terms of thinking you're going to go and, at the time anyway, use neural networks for everything, it was crazy. It was a crazy thing.
I think what you need to deliver is very clear, right? Because they set the expectations with the client. Everything has to be explained to the client, which might not be a technical stakeholder at all. So I think maybe that was was it a struggle for you, going from talking, all these terms with these professors and your fellow students and colleagues, and then going to a boardroom with people who don't know anything about machine learning. So
I loved it, man.
That was a good...
I wish I did McKinsey before I did my PhD. And the reason why is because when you learn that project management toolkit, when you know how to think to yourself, okay, this is what I need to deliver. You have a fully formed project. You know who your stakeholders are, what the deliverables are at every single milestone. If, when in McKinsey, you learn all these things about issue trees and, how to do MISI, mutually
exclusive. Yes. It's
comprehensively now. Completely exhaustive. Yes. So you fully plan out a project. You have contingency plans for everything that goes wrong. You never feel yourself kind of getting lost. You always find a way to be able to redirect yourself back. And during my PhD, there were plenty of times when I got lost. So I love that aspect.
Yes.
The main part I didn't love that much was the fact that you can't be as researchy as you want to be. But at the same time, that wasn't the nature of the job. But I was naive and young, and I was like, no, I demand to be able to use neural networks anytime I want. And they were like,
no. Fair. And for those of students who are keen on analytics and data science, what would a person in that area do at McKinsey? If you can walk us through high level, a project you worked on, just for people to understand, what would a technical person or an analytics person do at a consulting company?
McKinsey was really cool because they were very secretive about everything.
Secretive?
Yeah, so I can't even tell you the client name. But
of course. No. I was just type of projects, improving X or...
We had this one time, this retreat, and it was for the risk practice, and I thought we'd get McKinsey merchandise or something because there was no merch. And the only thing that we got, was a sticker that said risk. That was, and I put that on my iPhone, right? And everyone was like, what is this, man? And I was like, this is my team.
That's all we do, right?
That's it. Don't even ask where I work. So yeah, McKinsey. So a typical day in the life might be you get tasked on a project, right? The engagement manager will task you as a data science sort of specialist. At the time, they had a really kind of a data science fellow is what they called it. But they will task you to come along, and you might be involved in what's called the initial value proposition, which is what you present to the client to kind of say, look, we identify this area where value can be added. We want to be able to explore with you whether or not this is true. To do that, we need to spend a couple of weeks there, understanding what the current state is, looking at what your current operating model looks like, and then looking at your target operating model, right, and then seeing what you need to be able to get from A to B. To do that, we're going to use data. So therefore, I come in, and then when the workflow gets developed, right, at some point, if you are somebody kind of close to operations or close to the work, you might be involved in that side of the planning, which is cool because you get to see
the business side of things.
You get to be somebody in the room with CXO level people, right, in a certain bank. And so at some point I was involved with discussions with people at very, very high positions as a data scientist. And so I was like, this is so cool because I get to interact with these stakeholders and understand how they see data science. How do they see the problem? How can I translate that problem into a data science problem? So for example, if they want to understand what are the main impediments to growth in this particular sector
Yes.
as a result of certain other variables, in the market changing. Understanding that question and then designing a workflow around that that's able to deliver what they need on time is a very cool problem. So that was one side of the work, right? It was in the planning side.
Yes.
On the execution side, so now that you have your plan, time to go ahead and do stuff, right? Like you have to interact or engage with the data members or the machine learning kind of side on the client side. So that's where you speak to the data engineer. That's where you speak to the data scientists on their side. You might speak to some of the programmers on their side. Because I worked in risk, I would speak to some of the risk team on their side as well that were very, very statistically affluent. They would really understand like what they wanted from this project. Those stakeholder relationships that you build alongside your engagement manager, but you also have to manage them yourself. That's sometimes not the case in tech, which we'll get to later, but in McKinsey, it was very necessary to build up a good relationship because remember, when you go to the client side, you're going to be there with your team, with the client team for a very long time, right? And the way that you build up that relationship dictates how the relationship evolves, but 100%. Also over time, if you're able to then secure further projects with them to be able to kind of like continue to deliver impact on their projects. And so you want to make sure that not only are you delivering on the data science part, which is something that a lot of people can learn. It's not something which is as esoteric as people believe. The hard part and the part where you really deliver impact and whether you deliver a successful project or not is where you able to deliver what the stakeholders needed you to deliver. Were you able to do it in a way that that made it enjoyable to the entire team?
Communicate it well, I'm assuming, because they're you have also the non-technical audience from the client, which are probably the more senior people.
That's it.
That need to understand what's happening because at the end of the day, they're paying from their budget. So
that's it. You can't just sit there and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to assume they understand and carry on. No, like you need to make sure that
they will make sure you tell them what you did exactly. And I'm assuming then your PhD helped in a way because working in these projects and different stakeholders have maybe helped you build your communication skills a bit, because if you didn't do that type of research where you're working with different people, might have not helped you in your job as well. So maybe in a way it contributed to building your communication skills to be able to, manage your stakeholders. But I guess the timelines were
most definitely
very different in a way. It's more intense.
Most definitely. So during my PhD, I'd spend the morning, for example, writing Python, and then like in the afternoon, I'll be in Addenbrookes Hospital with the pathologist looking under a microscope at cancer slides. And then you walk past the patients, right? And the patients were your main stakeholders. Those are the ones that we're trying to develop all this research for in the first place. And a lot of people, unfortunately, when you don't necessarily see that side of things, it depends. If you're somebody driven by, from an emotional place, you're able to kind of gain a lot of perspective and energy from kind of like, from your stakeholders. It's a very extroverted sort of position. And I love that. So kind of taking or exporting that experience from my PhD, you change up the stakeholders now, right? You kind of like take away all the cancer research stuff, you put in McKinsey, you put in like the banking side, the risk side, and, very short timelines. A couple of business class flights.
But you still have that connection, right? Like with the person you're delivering to at the end of the day.
It's true. That's it, exactly.
Yes. So you started your job at McKinsey and then you moved to Facebook and you worked at TikTok and this drug discovery company. So can you walk me through these jobs briefly? And in terms of what you did in these different settings, because I think it's very insightful for students interested in data science and machine learning to know where they can apply all this knowledge and what industries and contexts basically.
There's a lot of transferability of skills between all of these different roles. And so at McKinsey, you really nail down the project management experience. A lot of people find it difficult to transition from consulting back into tech because when you're doing your consulting work, you're not necessarily exposed to the different responsibilities you might have in the technical atmosphere and as an engineer or as a data scientist there. And so to be able to, for example, go and grind leak code, right? That's a big thing. I had no idea. I was like, I was doing my Facebook interview one day from McKinsey's offices, and then they were like, okay, let's start on the LinkedIn question. No, not LinkedIn, the linked list.
Linked list, okay.
LinkedIn, the linked list. And I was like, what are we doing here? I was like, please God, no. They open it up, and then this hacker thing comes up, So that's one of the things that you really have to understand is that a lot of these different places, and a lot of the places I've interviewed that will evaluate your programming skills, irrespective of the role you're applying for as a data scientist. So you really, I mean, as you become more of an engineer, or as you kind of like transition more towards the engineering side, they start to really go down the route of understanding on your leak code question, solving skills. Are you able to hit the medium questions on leak code a lot more? They might throw in a hard sometimes as well. You won't always solve the hard one, right? Because again, they are very hard, and usually it takes me like a day sometimes, man. It's really embarrassing, but it was taking me a day to understand and figure out how to do it, and that's like kind of really off the grinding. So you need to kind of get those skills up. As a data scientist, the most that I ever saw was easy level questions on leak code, but then again, I applied in 2020, so a lot more data scientists have been promoted.
The competition is more intense now.
So at every layer, I've been asked these questions. So at Facebook, I was asked these questions. At TikTok, I was asked these questions. The main places that I wasn't asked these questions were places that that weren't necessarily as competitive in the engineering side of things as as they were getting to. So when I applied to Kareem, and also at startups, they won't necessarily evaluate you completely on your ability to solve leak code questions, because those test your proficiency and your ability to solve coding skills independently. Whereas in a startup environment, what happens is that you're often working in concert with all the different stakeholders together to be able to get something done. And so your ability to solve a leak code question isn't necessarily the best indicator for how best you'll serve the company.
100%.
So at Facebook, I was a research data scientist. That was a data scientist that specializes primarily so I was in the infrastructure team. So it was back-end infrastructure. I worked a lot there on kind of adversarial methods for so Instagram comment detection.
Oh wow.
So I don't know if you remember the Euro games, right? So in 2021, I think it was when they did the 2020 Euro because of COVID they delayed it.
Yes.
And England was playing in the final, man. And it was up to
the penalties.
And I sat there and I was like, as they were taking the shots, and I was like, I was like, bring it home, but at the same time I was like, we're gonna face issues, bro, because I saw what happened in an earlier game as well, where Facebook got a lot of slack for some of the comments that appeared and how people were able to circumvent some of the comment filters that we had. Work went into it to try to fix it, but at the same time, a lot of comments appeared on the profiles of Bukayo Saka, of some of the other players as well. Really disgusting stuff. It was really, really hurtful stuff. And so I volunteered to kind of like build some of the emoji. It was an emoji kind of like text, adversarial text detection algorithm. And it was kind of like looking at patterns.
So you look at emojis and you translate those to text to try to understand what the comment means. Basically.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, some of these emojis that are used, sometimes are used, as part of every single day kind of colloquial language.
But then
people that spam them, or people that use them in a certain way, or people that use them in a certain kind of combination to try to circumvent the filters is obviously what they're doing, right? They're kind of more nefarious agents. Building classifiers at the time to do something like this is before ChatGPT even made the scene. That was one of the coolest projects that I did. But a lot of it was, can we build apps that can detect bugs in Instagram? Are we able to kind of and also I should mention, at Facebook, the role of a data scientist. So the role of a data scientist differs significantly from field to field. People that write those job descriptions, sometimes they just sit down, they go to another website, they're like, this is what a data scientist does. Sometimes
it's irrelevant to what you do. I agree.
The hiring manager's given some slight input about what they want. It's like, we'll get someone that can do Python, right? And out of nowhere, it's like, we need 20 years of Python experience, and we need Tableau, and we need that.
Then you do none of those. They tell you write some, machine model or machine learning model or whatever.
I go into Facebook, I was like, let's work on those linked lists. And I was like, no, this is a dashboard that you use.
100%. And this is something we're going to touch on, which is how do different people define data science and what does it mean to be a data scientist versus like ML engineer.
That's it.
So there's a lot to touch on, but sorry, you were walking us through your career journey. Apologies.
So at Facebook, my career was 50% probably making dashboards and doing data pipelines. And the other 50% that I was really pushing on myself wasn't that much kind of inspired by the mandate of what I was doing, but it was more so me chasing other teams to try and see if they needed any MLE kind of like input into their work.
Wow, nice.
Because I like that side of the work. That was me working on kind of other areas.
Nice.
So I did that, and then I went to Kareem afterwards, right, which is like Uber in Dubai. So
and what motivated that transition? Like, how was it? Because you wanted to explore a different market, probably also Dubai, there's a big percentage of the tax here that's fully deducted in Dubai.
No one can deny that aspect.
So I don't blame you at all for that transition. But was that part of the decision, I'm assuming, or was there other motives as well?
I'm not gonna lie, my auntie got cancer, so it's another one of those stories where it was motivated by kind of my need to try to do something good with the time that I have. Like it's kind of joint optimization. Can I go somewhere, do machine learning, but at the same time try and help
be around her? Yeah. Okay.
And because I had studied cancer research, I knew a lot about the different things that the diagnostic tools and how the kind of procedure typically goes when it goes to treating cancer. I was like being close to her during this time spell. Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
So I transitioned there. I got an offer from Uber when I was back in San Francisco doing my postdoc. So I was like, it could be similar work. And there's where I did like some of the most creative work that I've done because I loved the econometric stuff that I was doing. It was a lot of work to do with how do we determine search pricing. It was really cool. I was communicating with San Francisco. I had one of my boys that was studying at MIT with me, and he went to Uber over there, and he was one of the guys that was trying to bring some like Grant Shapley's work, which is work on matching, into Uber at the time. And I started
matching the drivers to the people who order.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. Because at the time, like what was happening was that like at Careem, the algorithm wasn't doing what it was meant to be doing, and so people would order Uber, and out of nowhere it's like, okay, I'll order a Careem. And out of nowhere, it's like, okay, your driver's like 20 minutes away, and then it's an hour away, and then it's like, okay, the price has gone up now by 100%. So how do you restore that how do you restore people's faith in the service? There's only so many times people will open up the app and then see something like that happen, and then not switch over to like Lyft or something else. That's it. That's it. So I love that aspect. I stayed there for 6 months.
Your role was
so that's the thing. Like it was loosely defined. It was meant to be data scientist.
Okay.
I ended up doing mostly machine learning, engineering, and I was like, I like this a lot more than dashboards, man. This is much more cool. The same dumb visualize. How do we visualize this histogram?
I don't care about the histogram. I want to build some machine learning models.
Yeah, man. Where's what of this leak code that I learned? Where's this being applied?
100%.
And the interesting thing was that it wasn't even complex machine learning stuff that we were doing there. It was very simple integer optimization. So this was like they were very simple algorithms, and they had the most amazing performance, and they were able to get the problem solved very quickly. And so we ended up building that, and after 6 months, I was like, okay, I like this, but I'm out. Because working in Dubai is a whole podcast by itself.
Yes.
The whole
we'll do a part 2 on that one.
In Arabic.
100%.
A lot of people want to move to Dubai. And I think that it's very cool that people are going to go out there and explore the world and see what they want to try and do. But Dubai is a place that you go to if you want to optimize for something specific in your life. If you're starting your machine learning or data science journey, there are a lot of really cool startups in the UK. There's a lot of really cool startups like around here that you can learn a lot.
Yes.
Like you want to be in learning mode as much as you possibly can at the beginning of your data science career. Like you want to be surrounded by stakeholders. You want to be surrounded by people that give you the best chance to learn all of the skills and let you make mistakes.
Yes.
Because it's the best time to make mistakes. When you're younger, no one's going to give you responsibility for the entire machine learning stack or pipeline, right? They're going to tell you to go and change one Python file. You delete it by accident, right? It's like, I did that back when I was younger, your age. All right, cool, let's just store it from whatever. You do that, in Dubai, they're going to give you a lot of responsibilities very quickly because the data science kind of journey that is there right now. It's not in its infancy like it was when I first arrived, but it's still very much like kind of transitioning towards where it needs to be.
And they're looking for only experienced people probably to do the job, so there's not much space for you to come and onboard and learn from the more experienced ones.
That learning part,
Yes.
That's where you need to be. You want to learn as much as you possibly can, because if you want to transition back to the UK and then you want to call yourself a senior or staff data scientist or machine learning engineer here, they're gonna be like, okay, cool. Let's see what you did at the time, and let's see what the needle that you drove, the impact on looks like. And that's where like being here, learning the best practices from here, you're really in a great position to start.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
So that's why I'm like, cool. Like you're dreaming of Lambos and on your Burj Khalifa, like
then
like stay
go there. But if you want to learn, come to the UK.
Travel there, go there, rent your Lambo, rent the Lambo. Don't buy the Lambo, just rent it.
Good advice for sure.
So I was there for a little bit, and then I transitioned to cancer research. Back into cancer research, I spoke to my old supervisor at Cambridge over the winter, and during that time, I really missed the level of impact that you're able to have in that space. Cancer, I mean, it's another cancer story. Unfortunately, most people will have a family member or somebody that they know that has cancer and unfortunately succumbs to cancer at some point. And so my little brother's teacher ended up getting cancer, and they all loved her in that school. And she found out, and then 4 weeks later, she was dead.
Ooh.
And that, for me, lit up a light bulb in my head. And I was like, man, I've spent so much time developing these skills. Why not go back into pharmaceuticals and see, or go back into cancer research and see how I can help? I didn't want to go into a full-on pharmaceutical company.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to go somewhere where I'll just be like a cog in a machine, because it takes time to establish yourself and reputability there to be able to land the impact that you want to land. I said, okay, if I want to do that, that's a different career by itself. I can go and focus on that if I want to. So I spoke to my supervisor. They had this new startup. And they were like, you can come on board, you can see what you can contribute. I did the work with them part-time to begin with. That was a completely different area. So ChatGPT had just come out at that point. Ooh. And then any information you wanted to access in the world was now available to you in one query. Yeah. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to see what impact I could have as quickly as I possibly could, given the skills that I had. And in a startup, you can have very, very big impact.
Direct, basically.
That's it.
Implementation, execution, no in between.
So I became out of nowhere overnight specialist in SMENA, which is the docking technique that they use to be able to, understand if a molecule's going to dock properly to a protein. Wow. They had a brand new molecular subtype that they were working on, or several of them, in ovarian cancer.
That startup was in the drug discovery area. Like, what did they do briefly?
So what they were trying to do at the time, so what had happened is that one of the postdocs in my lab had discovered certain subtypes of ovarian cancer that also generalized to most other kinds of cancer as well. And what they wanted to do was to see whether or not any of the molecular, the submolecular processes that characterize those cancers. So, for example, every cancer's got its own particular color or every particular signature. If there was a particular mechanism that we could exploit that could be targeted by a particular drug. Wow. Okay. So typically what happened back in the olden day is that you take, several cancer slides, or you take several kind of these cancer cells you've cultured, and then you kind of hit them with different molecules, right? And so this is high throughput drug discovery. But with the advance of machine learning, with the advance of AI, you're able to automate this system. You can't get exactly 100% precise either,
accuracy,
right? Yeah. But you can rule out the ones that are definitely not going to work.
So all these trials were automated. You didn't need to do it.
We confirmed them. So when you begin the drug discovery process, right, you have to do all of those steps. You can't skip any out. But the very beginning part, the one where you kind of start off with maybe 1 million molecules, and then you narrow it down to a list of 10. Because remember, it's very expensive as well. As a startup, you don't have that much money. So you
like a testing phase of before you actually do it.
Yeah.
You're just trying to optimize which molecules for which cancer samples.
That's it.
For those who are not technical, because I'm not technical in that area at all.
So cancer is characterized by mutations in your DNA, right? So every single one of us inherits chromosomes from our parents. What happens is that you might get a mutation that comes from one of those parents that makes you susceptible to certain kinds of cancer. What happens is that sometimes you develop those mutations all by yourself through exposure to certain carcinogens, or just by random luck, unfortunately. And you get the mutation develops where it becomes oncogenic, and then the cell becomes oncogenic and it evolves into a tumor. Because the processes that initiate these cancers tend to be random, and some of them tend to be shared, you start to see certain patterns evolve in cancer. So some people, for example, that come from a particular area of the world might be much more susceptible to certain kinds of cancer because they share a familiar heritage in a particular area of the world. So that's a particular route to a therapy. So if you know that people there are much more susceptible to getting this kind of cancer, you might intervene diagnostically by screening them for that particular kind of cancer a little bit earlier on. But also what happens is that we know that certain kinds of cancer evolve in a particular direction with particular mutations. We know that they're more susceptible to a particular kind of therapy. So certain cancers, they're able to survive and not die as a result of the massive load of mutations that they have, because they're able to operate a different way of repairing the damage that's happened. So if you have the DNA, you have a break in one of the strands of the DNA. What typically happens is that if you can't initiate a mechanism to be able to repair that particular DNA strand effectively, the cell will just die.
So you won't have cancer, basically.
Yeah.
Because the cancer is not repairing itself, it's not growing into a tumor.
Yeah. And so, but what happens is that it starts to invoke alternative mechanisms to repair itself. We all have those mechanisms, right? We all have those mechanisms in us.
In the normal cells.
In normal cells. Yeah. But unfortunately, cancer knows how to turn these on, right? At the wrong time, at the wrong place. And so what you want to do instead is you want to target that mechanism. So certain cancers, we know what mechanism they use, what alternative mechanism they use to repair themselves. We know what the molecular process looks like. We know what proteins are involved as well. And so if you find a particular molecule, right, or a particular chemical that you're able to make sure it finds its way into the carcinogenic cells, and it targets only the carcinogenic cells as well, by the way, right? Like you have to find the process.
Because if you do it to everything else, you'll die.
Yeah.
You need this process.
Exactly.
But you need to stop it in the wrong place.
It's preferably selected in the cancer cells over normal cells. And so the double-strand DNA fix is the one that we target typically, right? We target that with a particular molecule. So that was what we were trying to do in that work. And I loved it also. It was amazing.
What was your role in that process or in that scientific context? Like, was it the prediction of what will happen if we hit it with this type of medicine, or like what was your contribution to that?
So as with any machine learning algorithm, typically what happens, so as with any machine learning application, if you start off with a lot of documents or a lot of items and you need to narrow it down, because computationally it's quite expensive to use some of the more neural network key algorithms, right, on every single item that you have to evaluate if it's going to work or not. So what you do is you employ other algorithms that aren't necessarily as expensive. So I built that entire stack. So you start off with a massive set of molecules, right, from some database, and then you understand whether or not those molecules are involved in the process that we are trying to predict. So not necessarily directly in the protein we're targeting, but generally in the process. So building that stack, you get all the way down to whether or not you think those actual molecules might be candidates. That's the first half of your
Which is pyramid. Like a prediction model.
That's it, yeah. Yeah, it's a prediction model, exactly. And then you try to find as many different routes of prediction as you possibly can. So remember, the more routes of validation that you have, the more likely your candidate is going to perform well when you go into in vitro. In vitro means that you go into cell cultures and some mice models and so forth. So being able to show investors, for example, because it's a startup, we think this molecule is going to work because we've shown that it works via method A, and an orthogonal data set using an orthogonal method, we've shown that it works as well. If you stack together maybe 3 of these different validations, you provide enough of a probabilistic basis to carry on to the experimental side of things as well. So my job was to make a convincing story to the stakeholders or to the shareholders on the basis of these different data science methods. Wow. So structuring the approach, making sure the approach was sound, making sure that we had the data for the approach, so the data engineering piece as well. As with any startup, you're going to end up doing everything, right? Yes. So you don't have specialization at the point. You are the data scientist, the machine learning engineer, the data engineer, everything.
But the analyst, right? So you had to also put all these insights into a presentable format to your... So you had to do that as well.
That's when McKinsey's PowerPoint presentation training was really...
Wow. See, like, the way... I really like your career because the way it was structured, you learn something from here, you learn something from like McKinsey and then Facebook, and then that's how you slowly start having that skill set of, it's not just building models, you have to present these models to stakeholders, you have to also talk to the people within your startup. So I really like how this free flow, because you weren't very like, I want to get promoted, because you just went with the flow and you chose whatever is like good for your learning, and you had some certain circumstances you had to go to Dubai, and just went to the flow, and it led to like a very solid skill set that helped you, and this is an example, so I really like that.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And then you went from drug discovery to TikTok, so to video discovery. How was that? Like,
so you just changed what's going in. At that point, I liked Dubai, but I missed the UK. And so I started...
So that drug thing was in...
So I was working from Dubai as a contract.
Remotely.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was working remotely from Dubai. I missed the UK. I missed my family. I wanted to be back here as well.
Fair.
So I started looking for opportunities. I sent off my CV, and I really wanted to get into the engineering space because by this point I hadn't dashboarded for a while. I was quite comfortable not dashboarding. I was quite comfortable not doing any of that anymore. And I was like, I want to get into the engineering side. I want to build products. That's when I started to focus a lot more on applying for machine learning engineering roles.
Nice.
Like I thought to myself, it would take a lot to convince me to go back into the data science piece again. I was like, it has to be something big. And this is where this World Bank thing comes up. But so with machine learning engineering, I was like, okay, I applied for a couple of different roles. Remember that with machine learning engineering, they want to see some demonstration that you're able to build and deploy a solution effectively.
In the interview, you mean?
In the interview and on the CV.
Yes.
Right. So on the CV, there has to be something that you built. You have to show how, where it was applied,
Yeah.
what you did. The interview looks different as well from the interview of a data scientist. So at this point now, you're looking at machine learning architecture.
Yes.
You're looking at a lot more architecture interviews to begin with, and that's where you really have to spend time understanding what the difference between tabular tables are and Cassandra and MongoDB and all these other things are as well from the data side, but also what sharding is like, what a machine learning layer looks like, what the SLA is. So the SLA is the service level agreement. So if you need to be able to build Google again from scratch, you need to be able to deliver search insights very quickly. But if you're building an algorithm that predicts the winner of tomorrow's football match, it's okay if you can delay it by 1 day, right? As long as it gives you the effective predictions that you need. So understanding how to deliver the right kind of SLA to the right stakeholders as well is another skill that's really intrinsic to a machine learning engineer. One that you don't necessarily need to deal with that much as a typical data scientist, again, around that typical data science job description. So that's where I started applying for those roles. I applied for a couple of data science roles where I made sure that I spoke with the hiring manager and said, I don't want to do dashboarding. I'm much more comfortable in a situation where I'm building things as an engineer or fixing things as an engineer as well. Because remember, data scientist is a very loosely defined term and it's still being crystallized.
Yes.
But
which we'll touch on.
Yeah. A lot of people define it as machine learning engineering when it's not some places, right? And the problem is it makes your CV look very confusing as well to certain people. And so that's where I started to I was like, the least confusing thing is machine learning engineering. Let me make sure that's on my CV. So I started to transition my profile towards I am an engineer. I am not a data scientist.
And from there, you finally went to the World Bank.
I know.
To do data science, but didn't meet your expectations from what I understood.
I didn't expect to be, driving the Jeep, saving, orphans.
That was in the US, by the way, just for context. So you had to move to the US.
I packed my life up. I said goodbye to my grandma. Everything was done. I was like, put my suitcases. My oud was on my back. I'm done. I go all the way to the USA. I go for my first day. I'm in some fragility conference. I'm like, yeah, man, this is me. I'm gonna start. I'm gonna save the world again. Still the naive way of thinking. And then it became a situation where I wasn't as close to operations as I'd like to be. I read the job description at the time and I thought that this would be something more akin to what I was doing at McKinsey, but more so focused on the humanitarian / development side of things. My stakeholders, instead of being big banks now, would be agencies or be countries where they're trying to build a hospital or a bridge or something else. The role was much more loosely defined again. It was a very loosely defined role, but it became more and more evident to me as the months dragged on that it was going to be a role that involved doing a machine learning engineering role that was much more constrained, where the stakeholders were not necessarily as close to the action as I'd like them to be able to shape the project that I want to go. And also, if I wanted to do machine learning engineering, I would have stayed at TikTok.
True.
I loved what I was doing there. I thought it was really cool. So after realizing this, I was like, I've seen this movie before. Time to cut the movie short. I'm not going to put data scientist on my CV. But at this stage of my career, unless there is the direction, I'm delivering on impact where I'm growing in some particular manner. The growth part was very, very important to me. I wasn't interacting with economists in a way that I thought that would enable me to grow in that particular direction. And I thought, okay, when you look at the network of people and you look at their career growth and their career trajectory as well, they wanted to go a certain direction. That's not the direction that I wanted to go. And so at that point I was like, look, you either accept that this is what your job will look like or you leave. And so I was like, bye.
And honestly, I think the way you were also thinking throughout, looking at your CV, basically, you weren't afraid of, what if they see that I just work for 6 months here? You really followed what you're passionate about. And I think that's a good thing, especially for someone who's experienced at your level. It becomes easier to do these shifts where, okay, I'm assuming for your first job, try not to leave 6 months in, but in your case, you are confident you have the skills. So you're literally I don't want to waste time. And if it's impactful, I want to do it. If not, I want to do what's next in my career. So I think that's a great lesson to learn of when you progress and get that skill set. Don't just think that, I'll need to do a minimum of a year here, because careers are evolving. There's more competition. There's more supply of technical people. So if you really want to become competitive, you need to follow the opportunity where your learning is and where you're also fulfilled person, because otherwise you won't be motivated to do the job. So I think these are some key lessons from this very interesting journey of yours. Yeah, you've tried all these different roles and all these different industries, and you've worked with people from different backgrounds in the US, UK, and Dubai. Which experience contributed most to your career in machine learning or data science? Like, where have you learned the most, basically?
It's interesting you asked that question. I feel like I've learned at every single place I've gone to. The people that I worked with were the ones that shaped the entire journey that I had at these different places. Where I learned the most in terms of project management and in terms of how to drive a project to completion, how to identify areas of opportunity, was definitely McKinsey. Definitely McKinsey. Like the amount of effort that goes into training you there, and the feedback that comes back to you as well, it's amazing. So it's something that I really kind of like, stress to people. Like, if you want to go and get a MBA without getting an MBA, genuinely, it's literally an MBA. It's a very compressed, very rewarding MBA. Go to McKinsey. In terms of tech, where I gained the most, I think TikTok.
Wow.
Yeah, I think TikTok. I learned an amazing amount of information, a lot of different kind of key skills there in a very and that's because TikTok is this really unique interface between being a startup and also being a
Yes, I've noticed that. 100%.
It's really cool, right?
Yes.
Like, you can still, things are still evolving all over the place. Like at Facebook was cool because obviously you learn a lot there, but their mantra there was kind of like, learn by breaking things, something like that. But TikTok is generally the case where, like, you can learn so much so quickly, and you're so impressed by the amount of ingenuity that's going on and how people try different things, and if you want like kind of stakeholder interaction, right, like TikTok is crazy cool because you have everyone from kind of content creators that you get to kind of like see when they're coming in, and then you have the people that do the product side, and everyone's so close to each other, right, that you just kind of meet each other over for lunch. So I thought that was a very cool place to learn from both the how does this massive layer of complexity work, but also from the tech side as well, because you work with very smart people there. You work with very, very, very smart people there that build things very quickly, delivering a lot of great impact. And it really shapes your understanding of, how these big systems can handle that much load, and what the best solutions are in that case. So I thought it was a really cool place to be.
No, I like what you said. I noticed it, which is like this startup mode, but in a corporate context. This mix is very interesting. I find it at TikTok, and I think this touches a bit on my next question. Maybe you've answered part of it, which is tech versus consulting for someone interested in machine learning and data science. What's the key differences? Maybe where would you advise them to go first if they're beginning their journey?
The thing is, it's two different jobs. I mean, speaking from my own personal experience, what we did at McKinsey was machine learning to solve a problem in the most efficient kind of way possible. So you'd go in, you'd identify the problem, you'd come up with the most efficient machine learning algorithm to be able to deploy very quickly, making sure that it was as self-contained and as explanatory to other people, because you need to deliver it and then leave.
Because they're going to use it at the end of the day to drive their operations.
That's it.
It needs to be sustainable.
Exactly. You're a lot closer to the stakeholders, but you weren't necessarily that technically involved because you can't be. To build something that quickly, you need to rely on age-tested methods, right? You rely on your logistic regression, you'll rely on your linear regression. Maybe if you're allowed to, you can use the XGBoost as well. But when you go over to a more kind of like, techie place, you're in there for a long time. Your sprints are longer, right? Like, the time over which you're evaluated for your performance is longer. There is an expectation that we have to deliver something and then see that impact realized within 6 weeks or 10 weeks or even 3 months.
That's
right?
Crazy.
Right? Yeah.
It's very intense. When you speak machine learning terms, 6 weeks is
it's true,
because you need to get the data and know how it works and see how it's connected to the operations and apply the machine learning model and make sure it's working. So
and the task will always change consistently. You have to be somebody very adaptive to change.
Yes.
Like, you will be building something and then they will be like, okay, throw one in the bin because the stakeholders said we don't want to use that model. That target is no longer relevant. We've changed the entire process. You have to be someone that isn't necessarily super attached to what you're building, because it could be the case where you trash it and then you start again from scratch. But you're serving the client. When you are in tech, you have much more ownership over your particular area of what you're building. You have a lot more time to see the value realized of what you're building as well. You're a little bit more disconnected from the stakeholder level, which is obvious because you have a lot more time to build something, and so you have those different levels of buffer between you to be able to kind of like guarantee that if the product manager changes their mind, there's certain things that happen before the project is cancelled or whatever. So you can get a lot more invested in the tech. I think if you want stakeholder management and project management development skills at any point, go into consulting. If you want to invest a lot more into your growth, then you go into tech. If you're solving for money, both of them are good. But one thing that I would warn is that the longer you spend in management consulting, the more challenging it becomes to switch over into tech, because at some point you're expected to have a certain seniority in terms of the technical expertise that you can bring. 100%. So proficiency, not just in building a kind of model for a very particular use case, but the exposure that you've had building tech models or for clients that have the similar sorts of challenges to those experienced in tech. So that's what I would advise. If you're young, if you just come out of uni, McKinsey is a great place to be.
Yes.
You still have the freedom to be able to make mistakes and take that risk and kind of like go and do what you want to do. That they call it the McKinsey stamp, right? It's kind of like most people, the average tenure I think at McKinsey is like between like 1.5 to 2 years. So when you do that, if you've established yourself as saying, okay, I want to go into tech now, I know a lot of people that went in afterwards, but I don't know a lot of people that get promoted consecutively.
Tech and then
it's very hard to kind of like see what you're doing in McKinsey, get promoted there. You'll enjoy it a lot, and then if you kind of see yourself as wanting to go into the more engineering,
super technical, then
you're more likely to go into tech as a product manager or somebody with more of a management role, as a people manager, as they call it at Facebook, right? Than somebody who's an IC, which is individual contributor.
Yes, true. But in McKinsey, I'm assuming the path would be, as you grow, less technical now. You probably oversee technical people, but you become more connected to the business side, because at the end of the day, they're like a business consulting like a service provider, and less more of like a focus purely on this tech or machine learning, or like in TikTok, this algorithm, or something like that suggests videos, etc. Maybe we can now touch on, because we've been talking about machine learning, data science, AI, can you like briefly just touch on what for you in your context, or like what do you think is like these what are the different definitions? Because it's very subjective. Like I feel the way you define these, there's no one person. Even if you ask data scientists, what do you do? Every data scientist will give you a different answer. So can you maybe, for the audience watching the episode, just try to break them down to how are they different in terms of machine learning, data science, AI?
When I was at Cambridge, we used AI and ML interchangeably. So we would have conferences where people would say this kind of AI, this kind of machine learning. We now talk about AI as being, AI is more so used as a businessy context term. So the machine learning side is more so seen as how do you get the job done.
Yes.
People wouldn't necessarily call themselves a ML expert unless they had some level of proficiency with at least building the ML models themselves and deploying them. But some people can be AI experts now because they can understand where AI fits into the business operations.
Context, yes.
How do you deliver an impact using AI? Then they hire the guy who knows the ML part to build it. The data science part is so data science, I don't know if you know how this job came around, right? But like it was invented by Facebook. And so,
I didn't know that.
It was invented by Facebook. It was initially data analyst, I think, right? And then they wanted to bring over some research guy to come and work at Facebook, but he was so...
They want to convince him, so they said, let's add science.
Yeah, it was like, my ego is battered by your, how dare you assume that I'm an analyst? I demand to have scientists in the world, right? So they changed it, and then the scientists came in there, and all of a sudden now we all became scientists. But the role that you do, the responsibilities that you have can vary from anything from making histograms all day long to building data pipelines to feature engineering, and then sometimes you have the ML component. I mean, the ML component is not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed at all, as it is the case in MLE, right? So if you want to do machine learning, if that's the side you want to go for, aim for machine learning engineering, spend the extra time that you need to spend tooling yourself up in that area. You can also go into data science, which is, I feel like the data science part to get into it is slightly, it requires a different level of skills. But they aren't necessarily as expensive to invest into as is the case with MLE, where you have to spend hours and hours doing leak code to be able to kind of like convince the hiring manager that you're legit. So do the data science part, get exposure to the machine learning engineering parts of the work, which you can do. And then you can transition back if you want to later on with experience on your CV to convince the recruiter to look at your application.
100%.
But yeah, data science part is a very ambiguous term. I know it was called like the sexiest job twice in a year by Harvard Business Review, but it's a job that I've seen through my various exposure to different industries now as having a very loose definition.
True.
People from all backgrounds can come and work in this role as well. It's no longer as esoteric as it once was.
Yes.
Because people have, got degrees in it, and people have courses and boot camps in it. So everyone knows what's expected of them in a typical profile. But if you want to do something MLE or machine learning kind of orientated, go towards MLE.
Yeah.
If you want to be somebody more so involved in the people management side, the business side, I don't know if there's like AI coaching, whatever, right? But like I think there are specialized courses, at least at McKinsey there was, for engagement managers that wanted to have a specialization in AI to be able to lead AI projects.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, so those are the three, I think, distinctions that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, 100%. It's a good way of differentiating these fields. And in terms of maybe touching a bit back on your career, you tried all these different industries, like pharmaceuticals and tech and social media, so there was like a lot of different industries in your career. Which one did you enjoy the most, and why?
I think I enjoyed the pharmaceutical one a lot. I liked the aspect of working for a startup. It felt very personal. You could really get deep into the details. You could see the application of your work kind of materialize when you see the scientists start to work on the bench with the compounds that they've ordered and putting them on the cells. I feel like in terms of motivation and discipline, that's where I naturally had the most motivation to continue to keep going, even when things got very challenging. And because again, if you're only motivated by money can only go so far in boosting your own personal utility.
100%.
If you're motivated by growth, you get to a point where you kind of naturally get tired, in your quest to get growth, given the amount of complexity involved, that you might end up giving up. But if you have, an additional stakeholder, or you find a purpose to your work, you have some reason, you have this kind of raison d'etre, or you have something that compels you to keep going. That's self-serving in a way. True. And when the money no longer, I'm not saying wealthy at all, it's not the case, but money isn't the end all to things, and sometimes you need more motivation than money.
100%.
And that's where I found that cancer research always has this particular element of being able to drive you to continue despite the overwhelming amount of challenges in it. So I enjoyed that the most. It's the one that I found that I was consistently motivated and disciplined to continue.
To deliver. Yeah, I feel it's a balance always, like whenever you want to take the decision of whether I should take this job or not.
Yeah.
Of course, money is a factor to consider, but know that it's limited to how much it can keep you going in your career. So I think that's a lesson learned from your career, numerous career tangents and experiences. You've worked in Dubai, London, and DC.
Yeah.
These are completely different cities. I've lived in two of them. How were they different in terms of working culture, but also out of working like hours? What did you do? How did they contribute to your career, your professional and personal growth differently, these different cities?
That's a great question, man. Yeah, so when I was
there's a lot of parts, but
I'm gonna be banned from one of these questions. No, I mean, I love working in the UK, and the reason why is that you have so many opportunities to learn from so many talented people here. You have people that you join in their teams, and they've been working on these problems for a very long time, and they've established themselves as key players in this field. And what I like about the mentality is that there's never a stupid question. Well, sometimes you might have that one guy who kind of like, why are you asking this question, right? But there's never something. People here genuinely seem interested in your growth.
True.
And when you are somebody that's at the beginning or the precipice of their career, and you're still trying to find your footing, and you need to ask questions that you might be afraid of stupid, but would unblock you on a particular problem and really help you get to where you want to be in your career. You don't want to be impeded by people that might be safeguarding their work, or people that might be a bit scared about, how they're perceived to other people. So the UK, I found when the different companies that I've worked here, there's a lot more opportunity to be able to grow, especially in the area of tech. In the USA, in the role that I worked in, you were contributing a lot more to other people's growth.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because at the World Bank, their ML and data science operations were still naive, or they're still naive. They're still trying to get their kind of like foot on that ladder.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you go there, you won't be working, you won't be learning about the most recent methodologies from people that have built those methodologies, or people that spend a lot of time working on those methodologies. You'll be more so using your kind of your own growth and your
contribute.
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest kind of like differences I saw. And also it kind of comes back also to the idea of the work. If you have a lot of stakeholders and you're able to speak to those stakeholders, unimpededly, what's the word, but unimpeded, you're able to ask them questions and you're able to kind of understand or contribute to work from them. If you're able to, do like at Facebook, for example, we had these little, I think they were like little internship things or mini projects that you can do with a different team, with a data engineer if you wanted to, or an MLE, and then you can learn how a particular area worked. You grow very quickly. At the World Bank or an NGO, people have been there for a long time. People have the area that they've worked on for a long time. They have their own projects. I found that the work that we did was a lot more, it was a lot more siloed. You weren't necessarily in a position where you could talk to any stakeholder you wanted, because everyone just worked in their own team. It wasn't a open kind of like planned atmosphere. It wasn't really conducive to having those sorts of conversations. So that's where I found that being able to develop those stakeholder skills that you need, right? They're not just stakeholder skills in the sense that I know that person from IT, I know the guy in the cafeteria, I know that, stakeholder skills in the sense that, I can speak to this economist if I need to, or I can speak to this stakeholder. I can have the conversations that I need to make sure that it's mutually beneficial for the both of us to be able to change a particular direction in the project. That's really important. So that's one thing that I really liked about the UK as well. In terms of Dubai, so Dubai is a very interesting place to be right now. The UAE in general really wants to be a hub for tech. They're putting a lot of investment into it. They're bringing a lot of really talented people over. They have a lot of different AI universities. They have that Falcon LLM now that they're working on as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's got like 128 billion parameters. It's something crazy. So they really want to kind of get to where they want to be. Again, like because they have so much talent over there that they're bringing over, it's a very interesting place to be. But you have to be somebody that is able to recognize the opportunities that exist there, to understand what projects you want to work on and the kinds of people you want to work with and the kinds of questions you want to ask as well. So Dubai is a great place, or the UAE is a great place to be if you're able to understand what you want to do and you're able to understand what resources exist there and you're able to marry all of those things together.
True.
You can make a really good a start over there. But if you go there and you just apply for a data science job with any random company, you might find yourself disappointed.
You will struggle a bit.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
You might find yourself expecting some Facebook level of kind of growth, and you go there and
No, I agree. And I don't know if maybe just because you touched on like your experience, now you are on a career break because you left the World Bank. Can you tell me a bit more about that decision, how you feel now? Like, why do you leave?
Yeah.
And how do you leave now that you're on a career break after all these different journeys? Like, reflecting back and now taking this break, how do you feel?
I feel like I've been really, really blessed to have the opportunities that I've been given. I mean, a lot of times I could have applied for places, and I've gotten so many rejections that if you just type in the word like unfortunately, right, you'll just see all the rejection letters that I've got from every single place I've applied to. But again, I'm very privileged to have been born in the UK. I'm very privileged to have had the opportunity to go to a good university here and to be able to study the things that I studied. But I know a lot of people might have a difficulty accessing the resources that we might take for granted. So I used to run teaching programs for free. When I was in Dubai, I taught a lot of different people data science skills and machine learning engineering skills, hoping to kind of get them on the path to being a machine learning engineer or data scientist, or at least boosting their career. So I'd love to be able to go and restart that program, at least for one more iteration. Nice. It would be cool. And then I'll reevaluate which one of these different random careers that I kind of like started off was the one that meant the most to me. And then inshallah, I'll carry on down that path. And maybe I might just like teaching so much I stay teaching. Yeah. But I feel like you have to send the ladder back down. You can't just keep, holding it forever. You need to help other people realize their goals so they can help other people as well.
Yes. In a way, I feel it contributes to your learning in a different way from all these different corporate and non-corporate experiences. Like when you teach, it's just a different type of learning where you're really connecting with your student.
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like giving your time to someone also contributes to your learning from a different perspective. I'm not trying to describe it, but like,
no, you're right.
It's a different type of learning. It's not like
and
technical, or it's not stakeholder management. I know there's like some more of the personal growth rather than, I mean both, but the personal aspect is more, is
you
more
validate your own learning. Like you validate, like, do I actually understand this thing? If you actually understand
also
this thing,
that definitely.
Any student that comes to you with any kind of question, you should be able to explain or to answer that question.
Yes.
I think it was Einstein, I can't remember who said it. It was like, if you understand something well enough, you should be able to explain it to your grandma, right? That's a really good way of testing your skills.
Yeah.
You can't use buzzwords to kind of like get your way out of it, right? You can't just say, oh, hold on. You don't know what linear regression is? Let's take a deep dive after we take a step back, right?
100%. And then if you realize that you're not able to do it, then you have to personally learn, go learn, and then see again and again. So yes, it's true. The feedback you get from the students shows how advanced your thinking is. How are you able to communicate these scientific or technical topics to a non-technical audience, or an audience who's learning. If there are like 3 or 5 key steps I need to take to land a data science job, what would these steps be?
So you need to understand machine learning. You need to understand the nuances of the different machine learning models when they're applied, how to evaluate them. You need to understand how to convey the results to your stakeholders. That's the first one. The second one is visualization. You need to understand what the best plots look like for the different data types that you have. And the third one is stakeholder management, right? So when you want to kind of convey or build a project, how do you communicate to different stakeholders? Because data scientists and data analysts are very similar jobs. You're speaking to many different stakeholders at the same time. And trying to understand from them what you need.
If I want to apply to a machine learning job, I want to ace the interview, what are some key steps I need to follow to land that job?
Number one, machine learning skills, but this time a lot more technically. So you need to be able to demonstrate the engineering side of things. So, how do you build these models, what the best type of model looks like, but also the engineering piece, which is leak code, understanding, what the most optimal complexity algorithm or solution looks like to a particular problem, because there was a pair of machine learning algorithms. You need to understand, sometimes it helps to understand what the complexity of these different machine learning algorithms looks like, because you understand how best to stack them together into the second thing you should know, which is machine learning systems design. So given a particular problem that you're facing, or a problem statement, how do you take that problem statement, how do you break it down into a machine learning problem? So for example, how do you build LinkedIn's ranking algorithm, right? Again, how do I identify the online metrics, the offline metrics? What is the best machine learning algorithm to be able to use for this particular use case? What data do I need? What features do I need? How do I engineer them? Those are the kinds of questions you want to be answering. And finally, again, it helps to understand the data engineering piece as well, because as a machine learning engineer, you will be using a lot of data a lot of the time, and then you need to understand how that data is stored, how you can access it, when it can be available at both training time and testing time as well. So those are 3 things I think.
Let's say I just graduated out of school. I really want to work in machine learning, or it could be someone who is just a young professional who want to make that shift. What are some key things I need to do to be able to not land that interview? Like, is it a degree in computer science? Is it a machine learning master's? Like, what do I need for someone who's have no experience or no technical experience, basically?
If you're a bachelor student, you typically have a project that you might do in your 3rd year. Being able to find a use case for machine learning in your project is always useful. So being able to get a machine learning algorithm from somewhere, integrate it with some data, show that you've done it in an academic setting, you had some input from a supervisor. It would be cool if you could even publish a paper. I'm not saying publish in the sense that it goes to even peer review, but getting on the archive just to be able to show that you've done something at the age of 21 or wherever it is, it's amazing. That's the first stage. The second stage is do something where the machine learning component starts to grow. It's no longer a case of, a lot of times they judge, okay, you can't get this job in machine learning if you don't have certain papers published in different conferences like ICML, ICLR. But those conferences now have an applied section. So even if you do something which is cancer research orientated, or you do something where machine learning is probably the secondary thing, or it's the tool being used to get the work done, it's not necessarily the end of it's the end goal of the work, then you can do that. If you're somebody that's much more interested in the machine learning side of it, then you go and you do something more mathsy orientated, right? You kind of develop algorithms that, solve quicker, different kinds of metrics. But also there's the hardware part as well. You might be somebody that's interested in distributed learning, for example, and how do we distribute the learning of this machine learning algorithm over several different systems? What are the hardware requirements? That's also in itself a master's that you can learn. All 3 of these different areas lead back to the same road, which is potentially a machine learning engineering job that you want to get into. It can also lead to a research scientist or a research engineering role as well. But remember, the research scientist role is something which is more technical. So if you want to land that role, you want to go, I mean, at least look up, for example, what Google's doing at DeepMind, or you look up what Facebook's doing at their research centers, and then you see like, okay, I know that these different groups there are focusing on speech to text, or they're focusing on, I don't know, like some ChatGPT thing. Then that's the area that you want to take your work in the direction of. But if you want to do something which is engineering focused, it's equally okay to take some of the products they developed, integrate it into your own research question, and then try to answer your research question using machine learning engineering, developing a adaptation of those methods towards your own line of work. That's also good as well.
And your answer purely focuses on skills. Does that mean I don't need any type of technical degree to land that job? Like, are we at this stage in 2024, or is it still that, oh, you don't have a CS bachelor's, you're not in? Or like, how does that...
A lot of people that I know, like some of the most pivotal contributors to the field aren't even CS majors. Like a lot of them have electrical engineering degrees. Again, but that's also a STEM, right? But like, you need to, if you want to get into MLE, the easiest direction to go starting at the age of 18 would be to go down a STEM degree route. If you're somebody that has already finished their degree and wasn't necessarily STEM, that's also fine. Because the other avenues to it would be to go into software engineering, for example, instead. You do a project there which involves machine learning, and then now you have that stamp on your CV. You worked on a machine learning project. Right, so you got exposure to some of the mathematics, but applying straight to MLE after not having that much experience in machine learning, it's challenging. Yeah, it's challenging, and so that's the reason why I do recommend at least doing the software engineering side. There's boot camps that enable you to reskill as a software engineer. Going down that route. That route, I feel, will take you closer to machine learning than retooling as a data scientist. Just because engineering is engineering, right?
Yes,
like it's
you need these basics covered.
Yeah,
basically.
You've had software engineering since the 70s, right? It's been along for a very long time. That profession's not going anywhere.
Yes,
data science is a relatively new field. It's a readapted field, so it's better to chase the tried and tested road. And now that road is more easily accessible to anyone than ever before. There's so many different boot camps and courses online to help you get into it.
Yes, and then from what you're saying, like if I'm a software engineer, as soon as I get the practical experience, doesn't look like I need a machine learning master's. That's it. Yeah, it's not necessary.
If you work with the right people, you learn from the right people. For example, if you go to Facebook, or even if you go to a startup, and startups are some of the best places to go to, because there you work alongside other machine learning enthusiasts or people that have a lot of experience in that field directly. Those people will have big networks. They'll know people. They'll know recruitment managers. They'll know hiring managers at Facebook, Google, and so forth. They can vouch for your experience. They can get you that first interview that you need. From there on in, it's up to you, right? Like after you land that interview, it's up to you to be able to carry yourself through. But like to get exposure to the kinds of work that you need to be able to carry you through to machine learning, to be able to get the skills you need to succeed in the machine learning engineering interviews, like the leak code programming skills and so forth, the systems design skills as well. It's always a good idea to chase the engineering
background. That makes a lot of sense. I think we can conclude a very, very interesting career path. Lots of tangents taken. If you want to just end it with maybe one key lesson to all these young professionals that are a bit lost, they want to retire by 30, 40, like what would you tell them basically?
There's only two reasons why you do a job. It's either growth or money. That's my personal opinion. A lot of people, unfortunately, when they're younger, they won't necessarily have as much money as they want to. And so what happens is that they take roles that pay them the most money, but won't necessarily offer them the most growth. What you want to try to do is try to find a role that gives you the ability to live comfortably whilst maximizing your ability to grow as a person, as a professional. Land those skills. Understand the direction that the market is moving in. And then inevitably, once you start to prove yourself in your given field, once you start to gain all of that information, those skills, once you start to establish yourself as a person in that field, the money can come. You don't need to go and land 120k out of university and then think to yourself, okay, I got that money now. Because again, if you're able to gain the key skills that you need, that money will inevitably come.
100%.
Be demonstratable through your interviews. So either do it for the money or for the growth. If you're getting neither of those things in your job, then you need to reevaluate.
Consider basically.
Yeah, while you're there.
100%. Again, like very, very insightful episode. Every single detail of your career is a lesson that you've shared. So thank you very much for your time. I
Thanks
really
for inviting me,
enjoyed
man.
the
Appreciate it, bro.
episode. And yes, we'll probably post it on YouTube and all different platforms. So
Good luck,
don't forget
guys.
to share
Take care.
it.